Final Fantasy II was released in 1988 on the NES. It never came to the US in the form that we can see it on ROMs that you'll find online. We got it later on the PlayStation in a remake, which is what we're going to be looking at today. For the longest time, I hated this game, mostly because I had no idea how to play it. It doesn't have the traditional leveling system that you would find in the first game and in a lot of the other games in the series. It uses a progression system that we'll talk about a little bit later. That being said, I'm glad I gave this one another shot because there's a lot in it that I do actually like. I don't like the progressive leveling system, but I really got into the story of this game. I think it's a much stronger story than the first game, and there's just more to it, especially since you actually play characters that have personalities, and they sort of grow over time, as opposed to the first one, where it's just, it could be anything. You have to give the characters their classes and their names from the first one, and they have no lines of dialogue. So if you get to play the PlayStation remake, and I think probably in some of the others, you get that awesome opening. It really sets the scene for you. Then it transitions into this, where you have your three main characters and Leon, who we'll talk about later, and they're running away from basically the Imperial soldiers, and you get absolutely destroyed in that fight because you're young, you're not supposed to win yet. You then go to the Rebel headquarters where you meet the princess, and you get your first quest, which is to basically go and kind of like prove your worth to the rebellion in some way. This is where you get sort of the first really cool thing, where you have a bunch of code words that you can memorize and then ask, and when you ask, it opens up sort of a dialogue tree. Some of those branches are going to dead end with question marks, others open up more of the story to you. You also get told to go and find Mithril, and this is pretty much a staple of every Final Fantasy game at this point. Mithril is the metal that you're going to need in order to get better weapons for the Rebellion so that they can stand a better chance against the Empire. You also get Mindu, who's your first real sort of transitional character that you're going to need. This is kind of one of the cooler parts about Final Fantasy II. With Leon being absent for the majority of the game, you get this rotating set of characters coming in to be sort of your fourth party member. The thing that I hate about it, though, is they all start out super weak, so as you've progressed throughout the game, they don't progress with you. And this is kind of where we can get into the progression system. In order to level up in this game, you basically have to take damage to gain life, you have to use your magic in order to get your magic to level up. It's sort of a hit or miss thing for me. I like the idea of leveling up the magic and leveling up your weapons the more you use them. I think the progressive system of, beating yourself up and essentially punching yourself in the face over and over again isn't that great. Anyway, back to the story. You have to destroy this giant ship called the Dreadnought. And this is where a weird part happens, where you have Gus here, and he can magically speak to beavers. This is never mentioned or becomes relevant again throughout the entire game. I honestly have no idea why it's here. I guess it's just trying to build up, Gus's character and whatnot. So, okay, good for you on that one, Final Fantasy II, but Why can Gus not communicate with the Windrake that you're gonna find later on when he could talk to the beavers? That was a weird thing for me. But as you go throughout the game, and you meet more of these characters and everything, you kinda get to know them a little bit better. And you come into some spots, at least 2 or 3, where the characters die. And it's kind of sad because, you know, especially with, I believe it's Joseph later on, you can go back and talk to his daughter and explain to his daughter and this girl that really liked him, you know, hey, this is, you know, what happened to your dad and to the guy that you liked, and it sort of adds that human element and a little bit more of an adult theme to the game where you're going through this war and you can see, like, the impact of the war and, like, sort of what's happening to the other characters, like how it's affecting them. You also get this a little bit when you're fighting on the Dreadnought and you have to go and destroy it. The Dreadnought has blown up a lot of the cities, which is kind of crazy. So here we get back to Leon. So we come full circle to frickin' Leon. He shows up as the Dark Knight, which, okay, great, you're gonna do that, but I don't really understand why. At least you get some more story into him, and it sort of builds up his own character, but I'm not a huge fan of this. Also, the Emperor comes back, which is interesting. You know, it's kind of like a false ending, which is nice, and adds on to some more of the crazy stuff for the game. It's a pretty good switch. It's better than, I guess, some of the other things in the RPGs that I've played, but I think they could have handled it a little better. Leon was the character that I did not understand in this game. I had so many questions after getting to the end of it, where I was just like, why did he immediately become the Dark Knight? If that didn't happen immediately, did we have some amount of time passage that we just didn't know about? Why does he immediately flip back to your side? After you beat the Emperor, is he just gonna become the Dark Knight again later on and gonna try to take over the world? I just had so many questions that the game was not gonna answer about Leon. I was kind of glad to see that the Emperor came back, because when you fight him the first time on the Cyclone, he didn't put up much of a fight for me. It might have been that I was just overpowered or something, but he definitely makes up for it later on in the game, and that's got to be the most frustrating boss fight I've ever gone through. Mostly because when he hits you, he can just heal back all the damage that you've done to him, or at least a ridiculous amount. Especially if he hits Gus, then, you know, for whatever reason, Gus just gives him a stupid amount of hit points back. So you really have to sort of favor more of, like, the evasion, so, like, blink and haste you want to use a lot of, which I didn't really know about until I got just absolutely destroyed by him the first couple times, and I'm like, what am I doing wrong? And I had to end up looking that up online. So let's look at a few of the other things in this game that make it a little bit different from the first one, and sort of helped it to stand out, but I don't think it helped it stand out in the way that really Square was looking for. So I mentioned the progression system earlier and kind of explained a little bit, but here you can kind of see it in action, where your characters basically attack each other and that'll increase some of your stats. It's a nice way of doing things for the game. I still would have preferred if, you know, you were actually gaining experience and gaining levels. They did it with your spells, and they did it with your weapons. I don't understand why they didn't do it with, like, health and magic points as well, as it seems just super inconsistent, and I personally didn't really like it. It does open the game up for a lot of abuse as well, so you can get your characters super overpowered, and totally forget about your magic like I did, and then I had to spend a few hours leveling up my magic because I just focused on like a lot of physical attacks and unfortunately forgot it. There are also 3 enemies in the game which just drove me insane. One was the Emperor, and then there was also a sub-boss that does the same thing, and then there are these Death Riders. Whenever they hit you, they steal your HP, which can get super annoying, especially if you add them close to death, and then they hit Gus and they do like 2,000 damage to them and totally heal themselves and kill your guys off as well. It's annoying. Here you can see a little bit more with the menus where, you can level up your health and you level up your magic and everything, which is a pretty cool concept. What I don't like about the game is the inventory system. It's really awful. None of your items stack, so you'll have like 20 different sets of, health potions or elixirs, and all of your key items stay in your inventory, so it just gets super cluttered for no reason. So I have to say the story and the characters are really the best part of this game, and thank God for them, because otherwise I would still absolutely hate this. There's a lot of parts in this that remind me a bunch of Final Fantasy IV, and that's mostly because you get a lot more adult themes, you experience a lot of loss, you kind of get to know some of these characters, and so you feel more when like bad things happen to them. That's stuff that I really enjoy about this game, and it made me feel a lot better about playing it. Like I've sort of experienced something new, but it kind of made me feel bad for not like sticking it out and forcing myself to play this more back in like the late 90s when I got this game on ROM and just was confused out of my mind and had no idea what I was doing. Anyway guys, that's going to wrap it up. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please let me know in the comments below, and have a great day.